So,
Cool.
yeah, how you
Thanks for
doing?
having me on, by the way. I appreciate it. I know I'm probably gonna say that again as soon as we start, but
Yeah. Whenever we start.
yeah.
Yeah. Or we might already be started. I don't know.
Are you recording already?
I might be.
Okay. All good.
Yeah. So, welcome everybody once again. Today we have Mr. Sloth here, Mr. Annie Sloth. How you doing?
Good. And actually, I'm not one to correct, but it's the new revival is Anislug.
Annie
My
Slug. Okay.
Anislug. Yes.
Annie
Yes.
Slug. Yes.
Anislug. Anislug at
It's a
Newgrounds.com.
weird transformation from one slow animal to another, but at least you're staying
Yes.
consistent with
I
that.
tried to go slower. Try to go slower and smaller.
Yeah. The height thing is actually kind of an advantage, being smaller and less likely for predators to pick you up.
Of course.
But then
Unless
going
everyone
even
does some stunts.
slower, it kind of goes in the opposite direction.
But yeah. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. I've been looking for guests, and you are definitely one of the people I wanted to talk to.
Oh, I appreciate
Because
that.
while on Newgrounds, your portfolio is basically empty, outside of like two projects you've been on. You are somebody who's been heavily involved in the production side of things and have quite a bit of wisdom with that. In fact, in some ways, we're kind of similar in that because I have hardly anything on my Newgrounds portfolio, but I've been involved in a lot of stuff. And I thought we could have a very interesting conversation about like the production process or like creating to marketing and everything in between, since that seems to kind of be your forte.
For sure.
So would you like to introduce yourself first?
Sure. My name is Tony Anthony. I am known online by Any Sloth and Any Slug. Um, but going into the new millennium, Any Slug. I am what I like to call the guy that does things. When it comes to actual art, I've been around the block, but where I really like to focus myself is art education and mentorship to people, to artists that want to be productive in life, and be functional. I try to offer a alternative perspective to education and to existence as an artist. And yeah, and then when I'm bored, I like to make video games.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things that you've done, at least within this scope of the community recently, is through the festivals, both in the panels and through the live streams in between, you've been running these kind of, what's a good word for it? Trying to think. Like you'd have at a conference, like seminars. You've been running these seminars,
As seminars,
which
pen,
is
that's what everyone to call you.
yeah. It's like a Annie University where you've been
Yeah,
giving
yeah, any
away
university,
tips to
yes.
people. So what made you want to start doing that?
Oh well, to I guess I can speak in the grandiose sense of why. I believe art education should have a more important place in because I live in America, and I know you do too, but maybe if you listeners and in America, unlike most places on Earth, we don't really give two shits about art.
Yeah,
We
that's weird.
we do when it entertains us, but not so much of what it brings to the human experience. And also, I feel like education as a whole should be free. Um, at least the access to not so much someone educating you, but education. So I'm doing my part, and
Yeah.
what I see Newgrounds full of is young artists and creatives that tend to lack direction, but no fault of their own. And it's always nice when someone that's been where they are is looking to give them a helping hand. And I think I give more to the community through support than I would by being another creator on the platform personally.
Yeah, that's actually similar to something I'm trying to do with these interviews in general, is to talk to people who've got things to say. Hopefully, this can help also reach out, educate, maybe even inspire people to do stuff by listening to people who are already doing things. So I think we kind of see a little eye to eye on that.
Yeah, for sure. I feel that you know, I you could definitely feel the sense of, if I'm not, at least in Newgrounds, if you're not creating something and filling your Newgrounds account to the brim, you might as well be dead.
Yeah, it feels like
And
that.
or you might as well not be creating. And uh, it's funny because I personally, for me, how I see my Newgrounds account is, if I'm actively creating a project and actually creating something, like I don't know when this is going to air, but um Anislug is leaving his Annie Sloth has left his hiatus cocoon and emerging an Anislug butterfly, and I am returning to, because I have projects I want to promote, and projects that I want to contribute. But when it comes to just being a general creative, I personally don't see a need to have people perceive me as
Yeah,
much as others might. Which is not to fault people that do feel they need that, but I have different priorities.
yeah. That's why I think slug is actually probably a really good turn for this, because it's almost like instead of making yourself necessarily seen, you're just leaving your trail of slime around as you go from place
Yes,
to place.
110%. My slime trail is left throughout the site for sure.
Yeah. And I think some people do need to go a little slower, because some of the best projects are the ones that take like fucking forever to make. But everybody feels like they have to do like these really quick, small little burst things. Maybe it's centered around a single joke, and if they're not constantly creating, they're not making anything. But if they were working on something that's a little longer, a little more polished and fleshed out, I think it would just be better on their portfolio as a creator, not even necessarily trying to get like a job or anything,
Mhm.
like overall.
Yeah, it's, there really is a can of worms when it comes to artists' existence online.
Yeah.
Personally, I feel that, like, I really do feel bad for most artists I see online. Um, Mostly because the people that the people that are at the stage they want to be at, that they aspire to be, are not honest about their existence and aren't transparent about the reality of what they do, and
Hmm.
how they exist online. Uh, to be more specific, you know, they'll see an artist that they love that's posting every single day and um that is on top of their game and making videos and streaming, doing all this stuff, and uh they'll perceive that as, oh, if I'm not doing that from the get-go, I might as well not try at all. Because a lot of people, what they don't see is where someone comes from. And a big thing is, you don't know the person behind the screen from a hole in the wall. You don't know what they do during the day. You don't know what responsibilities they have compared to yours. There's so many other factors that make you a functional business person, which really is what content creation is. And
Yeah.
that's really what it should be seen as. It shouldn't be your fulfillment as a creative, because you'll never be satisfied, and you're kind of missing the whole plot of making stuff in the first place by chasing likes on Twitter or views on YouTube or something. It's just not the point.
Oh yeah, like even a lot of people who get to the point where they can become like a full time, like I guess, business person with art more than just being the artist. A lot of them started out with like a day job, and they were posting maybe one thing every 2 or 3 days, as opposed to like having 5 posts a day, where 4 of them are things from last year that they're just recycling to keep their post count up. It's like there's a lot that went into that process that people just miss.
Yeah, and it's not so much the process, because anyone could stop and just really pay attention and be like, oh, okay, this person is
Yeah.
a full time job. They can reality check themselves. But really, what it is so like, I don't know if you know this. 'Cause I know we've talked before, obviously. But I don't know if you know this, but I do private mentorship online,
Yes, yes, we
with
have talked about
artists.
that.
Yeah, and a lot of the time that I've noticed with, I'll just call them my students, is they tie so much of their self worth to factors that are outside their control.
Yeah.
Um, and a big thing that's outside their control is their presence online. And personally for me, and it's ironic because as a profession, I'm a creative director for a college that handles their marketing. I hate social media. I really do, genuinely. I have a great disdain for it. I think the internet's amazing, but social media as a concept and as a function that it serves right now, I personally detest. And it's a big reason why I'm such a big proponent of Newgrounds, because it's exactly what it should be, and it hasn't changed that. And I respect Tom for keeping his original vision and staying true to it when he easily could sell out in a million different ways. So I try to hold on to this the best. I try to hold on to Newgrounds and support it as much as I can, because you see so much higher quality and passionate people come out of a space where the only reward is making something and talking to people. There's no potential monetary gain through the site itself. Obviously, you can have links to Patreons and your coffee accounts and whatever, but like, there's no inherent gain in being a Newgrounder that would see itself showing rewards outside of Newgrounds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that it's the main reason why I send students to Newgrounds constantly. I'm like, "Do you have a Newgrounds account?" They're like, "No." I'm like, "Make a Newgrounds account. Exist in that space, make some friends, and you'll slowly start to reprioritize yourself. Hopefully, if you're around the right people, you'll start to reprioritize yourself drastically, and you'll start to get, more inspired and so forth."
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I always see Newgrounds as kind of like the space for underground artists, even as public as it's been for quite some time. It's kind of remained that way because a lot of people just end up forgetting that it's there. And that's even why I named this show Within the Underpass, because when I think of like underground artists, I think of like when I used to hang out with my friends in the little cubby at the top of the underpass, and you'd see all like the graffiti and stuff there. And anybody who makes graffiti in a place like that, they're not making it specifically to be seen by anybody. They're maybe the other people who do it, but they're doing it just for the sake of making art.
I love that. That's totally true. Yeah, as somebody used to hang out in similar places, I totally hear you.
Yeah, it's like a corner of the world most people just never see.
It's the, when it really, what I tell people, and it's the same thing that I talked about at the Winterfest, where I really focused on social media marketing and marketing yourself, is when you go into any conscious creative endeavor, to get the most out of it, you have to set your priorities straight. What am I getting out of this? And then what am I putting into it to get out of this? Which sounds straightforward, but a lot of people don't have this thought exercise with themselves. And so what I see a lot of the time is I see people that are killing themselves over their social media presence and keeping their accounts active. And you'll see people with like 100 followers that go, "Hey, sorry guys, I haven't posted in a few days." Like, why are you telling me that? I don't like. I just that all that's telling me is that's plaguing your mind, and it's sad because what is social media giving you if it's not your career and if it's not your source of income? Like, what true obligation do you have to this machine? And the answer is none, but except what you subscribe to it, and it's either because you subscribe your self-worth as an artist, as a creative. If you live in America, art is rarely ever not right next to hustle, and that's a shame, because in other places in the world, art is considered a human fulfillment to your existence as a being outside of an animal.
And a lot of
our
other
ability to
places
make
also
art is
see
what
it
makes
as
us apes.
they also see it as like a product to society, which is why even like a lot of like countries, I could think of the Netherlands as one of them, will actually subsidize artists. Now they'll have like requirements, so not everybody takes advantage of the program. Like you have to fulfill a gallery show once a quarter or something like that. But like they'll actually pay people to make art for society because they see it as like part of the culture and it's a societal good. While here, if you're not hustling for art, people think you're like lazy or something like that,
Yeah, it's a perfect example is America versus our neighbor Canada. In my my creative passion endeavor is game development. I've always worked in different levels of it. I'm finally going independent with my own studio, but that's something we'll see later in a couple months. But
Yeah.
when that's what I've been doing this last year. But in the world of indie development, funding is like the biggest thing in the world. If you're trying to make a project that you can't handle yourself, which is most projects, and in America, finding funding and grants, usually grants are the game because you don't want to have to return, like on like a loan.
Yeah.
Grants are the name of the game, and in America, I think it's like 8 to 6 cents per capita, and that there's funding available in art grants, not just gaming, but just art grants that everyone gets. Paintings, and in Canada, it's like $18 to $27 per capita. Like it's not even in the same ballpark.
It's like a night and day difference.
It's night and day of what one government or it's just a society that particular ecosystem values art. And it's funny because America's compared to Bollywood is like the number one entertainment capital. Everything is made here.
Oh yeah,
it's like
we
visual.
Thrive off of art, but they don't necessarily see it that way.
Yeah, no, they see it as a benefit to their hours. They're not like art in America is used to satiate you between work. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Before you go to your next shift, it's not seen as anything more than that. It's the same reason why in public education, art is like, oh, you show up and hopefully you do your painting, and if not, it could just be a study hall, do your homework, I guess, like whatever, But in other places, lawyers and doctors are also painters and poets and musicians, because it's part of their education.
Yeah.
So that's something that I see Newgrounds as an opportunity to inject my philosophy on art as a human experience on the best demographic in the world, which is kids that are just passionate about something creative. And I feel like that's not a bad way to live my life.
It's actually something that was odd to me when it came to high school, because like into middle school, you have to take an art class like every year. It's just put into your schedule, but it's like basic art. Everybody takes it at that point. But then when you get to high school, which is really the start of higher education, is why it was originally called secondary school. There's no requirement for any type of cultures class. Like it wouldn't have to be art. It could be anything in that realm. Even studying a foreign language, which they make a separate requirement, could fall under a cultures class. But there's nothing like forcing you to become a more cultured individual throughout high school. And I find that to be very strange. I opted into art classes, especially because my school had a really good art program, but there were barely anybody in there.
Yeah, it's languages is a whole different. Is the same boat. Almost every country in the world is bilingual except us. It's like if you ask someone, especially in New York, because New York we have a very large Spanish speaking population. If you ask someone to speak Spanish here, like you might as well be telling that's the most offensive thing you can ask somebody,
Yeah.
like just because it's like why we speak English here, stupid. It's like no, well, other communication and culturing yourself is not that crazy of a concept, art because art scene is they're not teaching you art. It's not art education. It's just having you do art or music. It was funny, the best musicians I know that came out of the public school system are the kids that opted out of orchestra, choir, and band and took general music, because general music was literally music education. You learned scales, you learned how to write music, you learned how to play guitar to learn music. Those kids are always the smartest music kids. They're way smarter than the symphonic band kids that are in like basically AP music for performance, because they actually understand what they're playing and not just know how to read notes.
Yeah, that's all it is. They learned how to read sheet music and whatever particular instrument they were playing. They wouldn't even understand how to transpose between similar instruments.
And it's funny because I don't know about by you. I don't know what they called it by you, but the general music kids were seen as the stupid ones because they didn't pick art. They were usually like the quote unquote delinquent kids. But yet they're walking out of class with guitar and piano. and sometimes also percussion. That's 3 separate instruments.
Yeah,
Like,
so I'm in Texas.
yeah, exactly.
We don't have general music, at least in my school. The only options after like middle school, like after I think, actually even sixth grade was the last one that had a music class. Junior high didn't even have where I was. You had band was literally band and orchestra were the only options. I think we had a choir in high school, but not even in junior high. So like there was no general music class. We had actual art education. Like when I went into AP art, it was a lot of the stuff that some of the artists would even talk about here in the festival. Like I did value studies. We actually went into art history, and we had to recreate other people's pieces to learn the techniques like you would in art education. So that part, like my school did fine, but we didn't even have like options for people who were trying to get into music as a career.
See, it's funny because I feel what you learned in AP, which is like higher level, the highest level of public education, like learning.
Yeah,
that should be base level. It should be base level, and it should be taught as soon as we're teaching students complex thoughts in science, math, or history that isn't above like this is what a president is, this is what a senator is, and they start learning about like actual points in history or scientific methods, or that's the same time we should be teaching them art fundamentals. Because as an art educator, because I'm an art educator at a college level, and we have to spend the first 2 years teaching students fundamentals because they just don't know. And like, if these are art kids that we see potential in through their portfolios that they have to apply with, but they don't know the actual fundamentals of perspective and foreshortening, and like it's the first thing that you can see when you go through the art portal is people that know how to draw and people that don't know how to draw.
Yeah,
because people can draw. There's a difference between like I can draw and I know how to draw. Those are two different things.
Because I remember in high school, I was doing like 3-point perspectives and stuff when we're doing like stuff that architects would do. It's like, I want you to design a skyscraper in 3-point perspective. It's like, okay. Like that was the type of stuff I was doing. Like, why aren't we doing this? Like everybody is doing this. This is actually a very
everyone should be
doing
thing
to do.
And it gives you because really what fundamental art does, besides teaching you like a hand-eye coordination and it's teaching you how to look. Because in fundamentals, you're only drawing from your life. It's only from reference, and usually reference that's that it's in front of you, like a still life. Yeah. Because you have to learn how to observe and not draw what you think you see, but what you actually see, and learn how to transfer information and how to observe the world around you a little bit deeper than survival needs. You know, like it's this. It just feels like life skills that we should be. You know. I hope I'm not turning this into a soapbox hour, but
no. Actually, this is entirely what this type of stuff is for. I remember when I first jumped into the festival server, and I was talking to people, and they were wondering like what they could do to really improve. And I noticed like a lot of people don't even have backgrounds in their art, and I find a lot of people who don't have backgrounds in their art is mostly because they haven't done still lives and stuff like that, things where you would actually be drawing other objects than just people. And also, still life helps you learn values and like how shadows are casted on things. And I kept telling people to do still life, and they're like, they had no idea what that word even meant.
Yeah, it really, to sum up the education conversation, it's really, it feels, for me, as an educator, I think I have a moral obligation to give my even though I'm only 24, my life's work so far, give it some credibility. And to show to people that, you know, art is just as important as these other subjects, because art is the reason. Art will show you how beautiful STEM is. Because I'm a huge nerd. I have, my first degree was in science. You know, I'm not a
what
like an art forensic science. I wanted to be
cool.
I wanted to help with be like a crime scene investigator. I'm not so much into the police work, but I think definitely being smart people on the side of justice is not a bad idea. So
that's actually a pretty handy thing to have in general for your life path, because like for marketing and stuff, if you're trying to figure out what was successful for other people, using a lot of the same principles, you could kind of like dissect and reverse engineer what a lot of people did to make it work for like you.
Yeah, that's been really, that's how it's funny. I try to catch myself from, well, not catch myself. Look at that. It's such a hard thing. I don't like talking about myself too much, but I realize that's the whole point of the show. So
Yeah.
I feel like I have to. So let me try to break through that insecurity and actually talk about it. So how I go about my existence from the get go. Thankfully, I was born with some genetic code that made me want to um, collect experiences. I'm very easy at starting things, and I'm very easy at letting things go. And I can just move on to the next thing. And I like asking why. I've always liked asking why. Not in an annoying sense, but in a sense to then like get a baseline information and then take it and run with it. Um, so I've always loved functional skills with my hands. It's the reason why I like drawing. It's the reason why I've worked in every single level of cooking sorry, food service besides hostess, because I'm not pretty enough to be a hostess. And I was a EMT. I was an emergency response medic. Emergency medical technician, technically EMTD.
Yeah.
For 4.5 years. I got really good at working with my hands for the most dangerous of situations. And what doing all these different life things for me, and also I'm really big into chemistry. I like the physicalness of a chemistry lab. I remember in school doing labs, and physically using chemistry knowledge to create colored flames, or to at one point make ice cream in a bag, some whatever public school bullshit, but just using my hands, but by doing that, it's allowed me to break down the human experience in all these different disciplines into fundamental words and nuggets that can be digestible through educating somebody. It's all towards that same common goal, and it's made me more worldly. It's made me more empathetic, more more connected to the people around me and their experiences. And I wouldn't give it up for the world. And I think for the reason why is because I see art in everything. It sounds cliche, but that's really how I look at art. I know that's how you look at art. I know that's how most of our friends and our colleagues in Newgrounds look at art, is that everything is beautiful in its own right. It's not just cool explosions in CGI movies and anime characters or whatever the fuck people are watching. You know what I mean? It's beyond that. It's our human experience. It's our perception. Colors and values is how we exist in reality. So like offer it some fucking respect. All because all because it's not directly in a textbook next to some president's name or some shit. It's like give it the kudos it deserves.
Well, yeah, because there used to be no difference between like knowledge and art, and part of it even comes to the watering down of the word, because we've started using art to mean a very specific field, even though like traditionally it used to just be synonymous with the word discipline. When we were talking about any art, we're talking about disciplines, and most of the people that taught us or how to like soak in knowledge, how to figure out what knowledge is, the philosophical degrees. Most philosophers in history were also artists, and they were also the ones that gave us the principles in which we now know as like science, how we learn certain things. And it used to just be like this well-rounded field of like anybody who's interested in this would have also been interested in this because it colors how they view the world. And now we're just like compartmentalizing everything so much that they're losing the connections they once had.
Because art teaches you how to observe and how to problem solve. Why can't and besides teaching you, as I said, hand-eye coordination, a functional skill with your hands, keeping your brain active, it teaches you how to observe, how to retain, and how to, like I said, problem solve. These are core. These are core traits and skills that are needed to progress a species. It's that important. It's that important. If we couldn't draw, and if we couldn't perceive reality and transfer it in I'm just going to use drawing, but I feel the same way about music, and just drawing is my world more so. and one I know you would relate to easier. Like we couldn't build ships to explore. We couldn't draw our maps. Cartographers are the reason why we even all live in the places that we do, and we don't just live in Africa still. You know, like it's the reason why we've branched out as a species, because we trust people to navigate us using their artistic ability. You know, it's so much more important than what we give it to. And you know, I'm repeating myself at this point now, but it's just so important, and I want to drill it in people's brains.
I think modern day, a lot of people are losing that feeling because now we've got programs that can end up mapping things out for us. So like earlier with astronomy, you actually used to have to chart out things by hand and artistically represent stuff to be able to explain it to your peers and things like that. But now you can use like a CGI to actually make a model of a local star cluster without having to like hand paint it or anything. So technology has made us be able to make art we never could make before, but also has kind of like been watering down people's perception of art at the same time.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned CGI versus hand painting. So when I describe what I focus on with my students at work, people think I teach fine arts. I teach 3D modeling and UI UX design, but they're taking drawing and still life because they have to understand these things on a fundamental level if you're going to accurately recreate it digitally. You know, like, you know, a lot of people are shocked when they're like, oh, so I'm like, oh yeah, I don't teach fine arts. Everyone thinks I'm a fine arts professor. I'm not. I just, you know, I might as well be at an associate's level because that's what they spend the first 2 years doing. But, you know, it's just so, it's, you know, perfect example. This is going to sound so boomery, but I feel like we're both getting to that age where we're going to have boomer opinions.
I'm 30, so.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You're farther along than I am. They're getting rid of cursive handwriting in school. What the fuck is that about?
I don't know.
What's that about? What, because we have
keypads
that kids don't know how to write anymore?
Yeah, like I hated it as a kid, but like I appreciate it now that I'm older. It's like, thank God they made me learn how to write in cursive, especially because there's a lot of old stuff written in cursive and I know how to read it because I learned how to read it.
And also cursive writing fixes your regular writing, because all regular writing is a more simplified version of cursive writing, you know. But it's like it's funny. I tell people, if you want to understand style, everyone talks about style. That's like the word. If you listen to my Summerfest panel, I might as well have like a big on my forehead written with a big X through it, style. I hate that word.
Oh, but same. I've been going on rants about that.
People are so attached to that word in the worst way possible. But
I care more about people finding their voice as an artist than anything about a style.
100. I tattoo on my chest if I could. What I tell people is, you really want a good idea of what style actually is, look at 100 people's different handwriting.
Yes. They're
all saying the same thing, but they're all just, you could tell, when you can tell someone's handwriting, it's the same way you can tell from someone's art. It's their style. Mm-hmm. And practicing by hand, writing in cursive and writing out things in English and stuff, writing essays. Everyone's like, why do I still have to write essays on paper in school? Because you have to learn how to literally have your own voice. The only way to differentiate you in writing form. You know, they used to write books by hand out of necessity, but even when they were making that press, people were still writing books by hand.
Yeah, a lot of people had to rewrite people's books by hand and tried to make
for
it
learning, for education,
as possible too. Yeah,
that's an old education technique. Whatever textbook they had, all the students had to rewrite the textbook. You know, it's, you know, that great, that's like forever ago, but still, like, I wouldn't have a student do that now and saying that that's still a legitimate. But what that extreme example does is it shows a respect for the knowledge material.
Yeah.
It also shows a necessity of the skill that was taken to create that. If you want to become an expert, you have to literally have the same skills as other experts. You know, and find the like I said, how drawing is actually about observation and problem solving. You have to find the benefits in something beyond its surface level. You have to look a little deeper. A little deeper. You have to find the actual meaning of why you do things. People, it's literally the wax on, wax off. I use Mr. Miyagi quotes all the time when I'm teaching, especially the freshmen. Because when they're literally learning like the most simple fundamentals. I'm like, the whole movie, that whole Karate Kid's whole point is to respect the process and to respect the process, to humble yourself and to learn something, to consume in what you're taking, to really understand things. Because if you do that, you become a master. You become the Karate Kid. You learn to, because the difference between what's the other kid, the antagonist kid, the bully,
Johnny
what's
Lawrence.
his name? Johnny. The difference between Johnny and Christ, I'm bad. The Karate Kid, whatever. Daniel. The difference between Johnny and Daniel is that Johnny is good at karate. Daniel understands karate.
Yes.
That's what the movie's trying to tell you. So when I tell people about Mr. Miyagi, I'm like, the whole movie, why am I waxing your car? Why am I painting your fence? Well, you're understanding motion. You're understanding repetition. You're understanding discipline, practice, all the things that Mr. Miyagi was talking about.
Well, there's also a second part to that too, right? Like there's another lesson in there towards the older people, because good faith only goes so far. And eventually Mr. Miyagi actually has to break down what it means, what he's been doing. And that's the whole little confrontation where he tells him to perform the moves and he tries to strike him.
Well, that's why the second half to being a great educator is to be transparent and to explain yourself. It's the same reason why I get like when a parent disciplines you. Bad parenting is disciplining your child and not telling them why. Then it's just like I just got like in trouble. Why the hell did I get in trouble? Well, the reason why mom or dad got upset is because you did X, Y, and Z. Do you understand how that makes me feel? If you really explain to them, if you're not teaching them why they're in trouble, one, they're going to do it again, and two, they're just going to grow some resentment. So if I'm an educator and I'm forcing, the worst thing as a public school education platform, I don't know about other countries, but in America, is we don't tell kids why they do homework. We just tell them to do it.
We don't tell them why to do anything.
You just do it. Do it because I told you so. Because it's run by it's run by adults and who should be mentors, but instead they're just dictators, and they like having their little controlled environment. And it's by people that don't give a shit. They want to give the time to explain to kids why they do things. You would have so many more kids excited about math and science and history if you told them why they were learning it. Because no, you're not sitting there because everyone's like, I'll never use math ever in my entire life. Well, the reason why you go to school is because public education. That's why I'm a huge advocate for college in a time when people say college is bullshit and just a waste of time and money. Standard education teaches you how to learn, and higher education teaches you how to inquire, how to ask why, how to dig deeper. Public education is supposed to tell. The reason why you're retaining all this information is because it's teaching you how to retain information. And a test, all a test is, yes, a test does not test your knowledge and how smart you are, but a test does show you how good you are at retaining knowledge and executing that knowledge. And your ability to take in knowledge. And if you're good at test taking, that means you're good at retention. Like, people talk about that as a bad thing. Like, all school does is teach you good at retaining. Like, yeah, that's a really important skill to have. It is, It's such an important skill because so many people read shit and then don't, like, perfect example, you can tell someone 1,000,000 times and just keep forgetting because they're not retaining.
Yeah, I think my only problem with how college is right now is mostly because it's become a pipeline, right? If you actually look like through the history of education in the U.S., at one point in time, that was more of what happened in high school, but high school also wasn't mandatory, right? Like, a lot of people's education stopped at 14, which I think might be a little early, right? Like, I have no problem with people being in high school, but eventually as high school became a mandatory thing, it became more of a pipeline for getting people to college instead of teaching the generalized things that a lot of people end up having to repeat in their first couple years of college anyway. And I would like to see that straightened out a little bit more, because I noticed when I even went, it's like a lot of this is just high school education. Like, I did this in high school. I don't know why I'm repeating it.
One, I totally agree with you. Yeah. And I think the way that you fix that genuinely and make sure it stays fixed is that when higher education stops being for profit.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that. I don't know how that goes on. I'm not that smart. There's people smarter than me that can figure that out. But the moment it stops being for profit, there stops being a incentive to get to force people into it. You know, you should want to go to school, and you should just want to be educated. You know, a big thing I said in both of my panels was, you know, learn stuff because it's good to learn things, not because you have to. Like, don't take a tutorial online about some drawing thing because you feel like if you don't know it, you're like dumb and stupid. No, want to watch a tutorial because it interests you, because it's nice to learn new things. You know, and when you want to go to college because you want to experience the community of collective thought and collective problem solving. You know, it's the reason why you do so much collaborative work in college in most majors, because they want you to bounce off each other. They don't want you to just learn and learn how to learn. You've already learned how to learn. You've shown that by either your SATs or your high school grades. You've shown you know how to learn, and now you're going to get better at using what you've learned to then explore and to dig deeper. And for some reason, art isn't in that equation. And when it is, it's ridiculed, which is crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, it's like also, I'm talking about the things that you'll never need, which this can apply to art as well. One of the basic things that you end up learning near the end of high school, if you were, I guess, on the track that they planned for earlier on, if you're like in advanced placement and stuff. But when you start talking like algebra, right? Algebra is a very important thing that everybody has to learn. And like, why do I need algebra? All I'm ever going to do is basic math. It's like, well, you may not use it in math form, but you're actually using substitution, which is like the core of algebra in just about everything you do. That's another thing that teaches you problem solving. And that's why like I don't get why people complain about word problems other than the fact that teachers aren't telling them why word problems are important. But like even as an artist, I use substitution all the time.
Yeah.
Right. Dealing with people, negotiating with people, I'm using substitution. It's like, it's a very important core, or I guess you say fundamental part of problem solving that you need in like everyday life. And a lot of people don't understand that it's being taught to them.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because I'm remembering this is a show and not just me you talking. Which
well, it's kind of that too.
When I get to yeah, I mean, it's just I don't want people to get this assumption that I'm like bitter. I'm not. Yeah. I'm not angry at the world. I understand how we've gotten here, and I have a rough idea of how we get out of it. And it's not perfect, but it's, you know, I'm not saying the world is awful. I'm not saying that this country is in the pits and it's doomed, and we're not like I'm not. It's not that big of a deal, but it is something that we need to think about, you know. And the reason why I sound so passionate is because this is literally what I do all day. This is my existence. So you know, and personally, I think actually, art isn't the place that needs the most help. I just know that art is the building block to helping the other things. Because I think the regular STEM field needs more help. Because, you know, kids are, once again, big boomer take, but it's scary because I have friends that are teachers and they tell me, and I don't really hear it a lot because most of my students are adults already, but I'll hear from my friends that are teachers of, like, you know, middle school and lower, where their kids are like, I want to be a TikToker. I want to be a Twitch streamer. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, do kids not want to be astronauts anymore, or scientists, or, you know? Not saying there's anything wrong with being a Twitch streamer or being for Christ's sake, that's what we do all day. You know, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like that's the peak. Those are the stars.
Actually, I would like to see more of those kids grow up to be Twitch streamers in a different way. I'd like to see them go through the entire system, and maybe they want to explain the fundamentals of physics to people on Twitch or TikTok. Like, that'd be cool to have more educators out on these streaming services.
Like, and I totally agree. But I think you reach, like, to me as a kid, it's the time to dream. It's the time to reach real big. It's the time to, you know, like, for me, when I was a really young kid, I wanted to be a scientist, and I wanted to just like because I actually loved Doctor Doom. I thought Doctor Doom was badass. I
No,
thought
he's one of the better characters. Yeah.
I thought the Flash was badass. That he used science. I thought Batman was badass because he used science. Like literally, like all of the superheroes and things that kids consume as. And when I was a kid, everyone was a scientist. Everyone was like just knew chemistry and knew physics and knew that was that was part of their superpower, you know, and what made them so cool. And you know, and everyone that I watched on TV was smart as shit, you know, and then it turned into and I wanted to be a scientist, and I just wanted to be smart, and I feel like that really hasn't gone away. I still crave to be the smartest person I can be, but and then I went into food because I just thought cooking, and I thought, and cooking was a science. How spices and chemicals break down, and then I learned that math helped science, and then I learned about all the scientists and philosophers in history. I'm like, the STEM fields are like ingrained in us because that's also how we progressed from apes. Like that's how we got here by thinking, and it's a smidge concerning when people's highest level role models are content creators.
Yeah, and I think part of it was something I was going to bring up before, but this is actually an excellent time to put in, is that right now the only form of being great that we have is mimicry, as opposed to like in the past.
Holy
there
shit!
was
I want that
this
on a t-shirt.
Yeah, there was like this
That's a tweet.
iterative process, right? Like we have this concept of standing on the shoulders of giants, and I was going to bring this up back when we were talking about having to rewrite down textbooks or learning the process, because the whole point, even the experts before us learned the process and then they broke it. Like they learned the process so they could figure out where the holes were in it, and then they tried to solve it, and then you're doing that in the hopes that somebody else will solve whatever the holes are there, and so on and so forth. And you become great by becoming part of this line of the iterative process of the species. But instead of trying to become the next iteration, we just have people mimicking things that they see are already good.
Well, yeah, the concept of legacy is dead. It's not what am I leaving behind, it's how much can I take while I'm here. That it's completely flopped. And then people, and I will say people like me, because I know what I live for. I don't have to be humble about it, or have some fake humility about it. I definitely live my life in a sense of what am I leaving behind, and that's the reason why I'm an educator. And people will be quick to praise me, or praise people that are in the same shoes as me, and I'm like, why? Why is that such a hot take? Like, why is this weird? That like I want to not leave my job shittier than I left it.
Yeah.
Like like how many kids do you know that are like, I want to be a thing because I like it, and I mean adults, not kids. Adults that that I want to be this thing because I like it so much that I hate what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
Like they're almost in that profession out of spite.
Oh, dude, I was kind of like that for a while. I mean, I'm more ideal than I am spiteful. But like one of the reasons, like I wanted to go into comics particularly, is because I have stories to tell. I've always been interested in making comics, but I find in the modern age that the comic industry just isn't doing a good job at telling stories. And it's like, well, screw it. I'll just go tell my stories. If somebody else isn't doing it, I'll give people something.
I agree with you. I think comic books. I've never been more. It's shocking. The man that cried when Stan Lee died doesn't like watching superhero things or reading superhero things anymore, because it's just a machine now.
Yeah.
It's just comic books are not the same they were when I was a kid, and that wasn't that long ago. Like it's happening fast. I'm not an old man by any stretch.
It's a process that started maybe the late 80s, early 90s, but you wouldn't have felt it at first. And it's just been slowly building up. And then we hit like the end of the aughts, maybe the early of the 2010s. And it's just like the weight on the scale tips and you just feel it all at once.
Yeah, for sure. I totally hear it. I could totally see where that that need to tell your own stories comes from. Because I feel that with video games sometimes, but not so much telling stories, but more so because I think there's a lot of great stories that are being told.
But that might be the problem. It's only great stories being told.
So that's what I was going to say. I want to tell my story through interaction. I want more interactability in games. It's the same reason why I like playing older games more than newer games. I feel like I'm watching movies now, so I'm not playing a video game anymore. You know, and that to me it defeats the whole purpose of video games. So that's why I do what I do. So I totally see where you're coming from when it comes to comic books, because I agree with you.
Yeah, like I feel that way. One of my favorite video game series is Final Fantasy. Historically,
I love
and
Final
those
Fantasy.
always told great stories from even like the very beginning. But then, like a lot more modernly, they've been watering down the mechanics and the interactability. 15 was somewhat of a like a breath of fresh air, but even it still had a lot of the problems that modern Final Fantasy have. And I was thinking, like, when I saw Stardew Valley kind of do that for Harvest Moon, it's like, man, I would totally like to make like the Stardew Valley equivalent of Final Fantasy. I was even like plotting it out and stuff. I've got ideas for how to make the game feel like a tabletop game.
If you need help, let me
again.
know. I'll be at your side, my friend. That's a hill I want to die on.
Yeah, no, but maybe we'll talk more about this either after this or some other point in time. But I'll definitely shoot you some notes, because that would be a passion project I'd be willing to dump like countless number of hours into.
Well, because that's, you know, what's it called? But that's what I'm saying by this concept of leave it better than you found it. You know, do it better than the previous. You know, Concerned Ape. What's his name? Eric, right?
Baronet, I think. Or,
I don't even know. Yeah,
something.
I'll
like
trust you on his last name. I think his name's Eric, first name's Eric though. But
well, I know it's spelled. It's Barone. I don't know how it's pronounced, but
oh, okay. But that's what Eric did, and that's what you hear him say when he talks about, when he gets asked the millionth time in a row, how'd you come up with Stardew Valley? He's like, well, I was playing games like Harvest Moon, and I've heard the other one he mentioned, or like Animal Crossing, and he's like, I know I could do it better.
Yeah, it's like, I don't like the direction it's been going.
Yeah,
I'm going to rewind it and then add all the stuff I think should have been added to it.
That's me. I don't usually like talking about products when they're products. Well, that's a Freudian slip. I don't usually like talking about projects until they're done. I don't like talking about it because so many projects die that, you know, it's stupid to even bring them up.
And then somebody's like, "Hey, whatever happened to this?"
Yeah, whatever happened to this? That's another big thing why I teach, and that you should go back and watch it. If you like hearing about marketing stuff, please go listen to my panel. Not because I'm smart, but I'm telling things that people smarter than me have told me.
I'll probably I don't know. It's during the Summerfest. I'll probably link it with the timestamp below. Yeah.
I'm making hopefully making soon a Star Fox clone. It's prototyped.
Oh, nice.
But that's how I feel about Star Fox. I just the original Star Fox has me in a vice grip, and it just feels like as the series went on, it just became more about these quirky characters and not the core gameplay mechanic.
Yeah, so much so it's like, how can we tell the same story 100 times but different?
Yeah, and I'm just like, ugh. I'm like, just that idea. Like, that's why I'm so happy that there's that one guy making an F-Zero remake. I was talking to Stampai about that, and I was just like, oh, I'm like, yes, please. There's so many of these classic games that were just perfect in their execution when it comes to interactability, and it's like we just lost it because of narratives, of story consumption. Oh, man, I love Star Fox, man. I can talk about Star Fox forever, bro. I love Star Fox.
Dude. So I especially I didn't play the original version of it, but I mean Star Fox 64 is effectively
64
the same
is so
game.
good.
Yeah, I played so many rounds of 64.
It was when it peaked.
Yeah.
It's when it peaked. You know,
so much that I got the 3D version for the 3DS just so I could play it again.
Oh, dude, the gyro controls could have been better, but it had the same feel. It was pretty decent. Because it's just I like all pilot games. I like being in a machine. I like games like tanks and stuff. I like being in like a vehicle. I love racing games.
It's a fun one.
Ace Combat's dude. There's this one arcade machine that Dave & Buster's has.
And the pod where you go in and it's like a whole semicircle.
It's Blazing Angel, like the PS2 game, And it's that thing is so sick. If I was rich,
You
I'd
got
put
the
one
two
of those in my house.
joysticks and you just.
Yes, I put that
I
in my
want
house
a
instantly.
Gundam version of that.
That'd be so cool. I love Gundam. I love
Yeah.
Gundams are. It's funny. My friend bought me um a mobile suit figurine, like a statue, and I've yet to put it together because I just had no time, but I want to so
Yeah.
bad.
Because like I've always wanted a Gundam cockpit game
Hmm.
where you're actually in the cockpit of the Gundam piloting it like a jet or something, but doing the whole mech fight and stuff. And especially having like one of those the pods that you use for those. That would be great with like the two joysticks and everything, make like a console.
Did you? Did you? Are you big into VR? Do you like VR?
I like VR when it's done interestingly. Most VR is boring, but if you like give me a really good VR experience, yeah, I like it. There used to be this kind of like drop down, like they had the helmet up on a crane arcade machine where you were like defending a beach from attacks with like a turret or whatever, and you'd pull that down. It was a full VR experience. That was unique. So as long as it's done well, yeah, I like it.
I think it's the best medium because I feel like for a while video games got stale because they didn't really know what else to do. They've like mastered interactability. Now it's just who can get better at it.
Yeah,
Like just a new way to. I like the idea of it's not so much that VR what it is that it's a new way to experience video games, and just content in general. But speaking about mecha, you're talking about a game like that. There's this game that was on PSVR called Rigs, and it was I was determined to be the best Rigs player ever. It was so much fun. So it's literally what you just said. You're in the whole game is you're in a mech, and it's like a gladiator like kind of, but it's like framed like an ESPN network show. I wish they made it for Oculus because I would buy it and I would only play that and I would just quit my job. Rigs was so much fun. It just had no support. It was really early PSVR days and no one was really playing it, and it just died.
yeah. I don't really like the PSVR as a system in general. Yeah,
It sucked. It was so bad. I've heard the newer versions are better. I don't really care. Oculus is just way better, or the Valve headsets or whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, dude, Riggs was so sick. Oh man, that game was so cool. But then you could customize the guns and the different armors, and then you had like cool, like like in like hero based shooters where you have like an intro like part where like it shows all the characters.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, getting ready for battle or whatever. They had that for the rigs too, and you can customize your rigs and like the liveries. It was almost like car customizers, but with the mech. It was just so cool. What a cool game! Oh, I could nerd out about that shit forever.
That sounds cool. Like if I knew about that, I probably would have even caved in and spent a lot of time on that, even on a shitty system. But
so cool.
Yeah,
but
that's so fun.
Yeah. Yeah, just it's funny. All this stuff is like you see. It's like that little burst of excitement is like the whole reason why I do any of this. Being able to just I don't know, because sometimes, man, I know I'll be like, what's the word? Vague, but I've been through some shit, and
Yeah.
I feel like, and so is everybody, and especially on Newgrounds, we're the box of misfit toys, when it comes to Newgrounds, and like the feeling, the satisfaction of art and what art adds to reality makes reality a whole lot easier, and it makes me appreciate it a lot more. Like being able to appreciate science and math and history and English, and and to then give people the support they need to support that feeling. Because if you don't have a proper support system, that's why being a good parent is so important, and a lot of people don't have good parents. And I was blessed to, they're not perfect, but I was blessed at the end of the day to have parents that gave a shit about how I was doing at the very least. Even if they didn't really show it that well, I knew they did. And if I wanted to talk about something, they would at least half listen or pretend they were listening, because and that's vastly better than the alternative that some people get when they bring up their interests to their parents,
Oh, yeah,
or someone they see as a support system or a paternal figure, because you have to be able to foster, as an educator, foster kids' interests early on, and but just so much that the function of being interested in something, because it makes them want to ask again and make them more comfortable. It makes them more comfortable being vulnerable with their ideas, and that allows for better conversation and more empathy. God forbid we had more empathy. You know, it's just art is so important because that's what it does. That's what it does. And I feel like sometimes people like us have to sit back and let everyone else enjoy the more, like, I've always considered myself a behind the scenes person because I very much love to foster and support someone that needs that, then let it fall at the wayside. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I spend a lot of time in a lot of these like calls with people, not even working on my own stuff. Like if I can like juggle it, I'll work on something at the same time. But like I've spent a lot of time basically supporting people like Phasma and stuff while they're working on things, giving advice and helping people troubleshoot through stuff. Like it's just something you do after a while.
Yeah, I literally hang out in our servers, and that's what I do. I chill and I wait for someone to bring up something, and I just kind of indulge them.
Yeah.
Not in some sense of like oh, hope someone likes it. Like literally because I'm genuinely interested, and two, it's fun. You get to learn about this new cool thing that someone's working on, and isn't listening to someone excited like the best thing in the world?
Oh yeah.
Isn't like just like literally the greatest thing ever is listening to someone be excited?
Yeah.
That's why I love my girlfriend because Lori, if you're listening, love you. She's just always excited about something. Like she's always just had. I just love like genuinely like interested in stuff. I just love listening to her.
It makes you feel alive.
Yeah, just like cool. Like this person's experience. This person's appreciating their reality. They're like for a generation of people that have probably said I'm going to kill myself more than I love you to people. It's nice to watch them enjoy their reality for even a brief moment.
Yeah, I think because I've always had that kind of like mentality. I walk everywhere, just mostly out of choice, right? And people ask me like, "Why do you walk everywhere?" It's like because life's an adventure. Just walk, like kind of just soak it in, appreciate everything going on.
I agree. Get your steps in. And another big thing I do is, and I when I tell mentor the kids that I'm mentoring, is because a lot of the time it stops being about art and starts being more about their everyday life. And that's literally that reinforces to me my philosophy on art is everyday life. And that's how important it is because those conversations always devolve down into I'm just not eating right. I'm just not focusing on my health. I'm not talking to people, especially on Discord. A lot of people use Discord because they don't have they're socially insecure, and it starts becoming that. But what I tell a lot of the kids that I'm mentoring is, if you work in an office, because some of them are like 18, 19, some of them are getting the office jobs and stuff. I'm like on Monday I do it every Monday, no matter where I've worked. Every single Monday or the first day of the week that you come in, spend the first hour or two. It's a big chunk of your workday. If you have the ability to, and not everyone doesn't have this ability, but try to sanction some time to walk around the office or walk around the building, and just ask people how their weekend was. Genuinely, don't ask them for anything else, because the first time you catch somebody, do you do this? You ever done this before? Like really, like did the rounds?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been a while since I've worked in a place with a bunch of people.
Oh, okay.
But the last time I did, I was actually working away from everybody. I was a sign waiver over at Firehouse Subs, but I had to check in.
Okay.
Like I had to go in first, grab the sign, everything, and I would talk to everyone behind the counter and stuff. You see how people were doing before I showed up there. Maybe sit down because I walked to work, let my feet rest a little bit, grab a drink, and then I'd head outside, and then I check in with everybody again before I went home afterwards.
Yeah, so you'll probably relate to this. Did you ever catch somebody that you could tell was waiting for you to ask them for something, and then you just like you'll be like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" They're like, "Oh, what's up?" And you're like, "Hey, man, so how was your weekend?" "Oh, good." They're kind of standoffish.
Yeah.
And then they're like, and then you'll finish the conversation. You're like, "Did you need anything else?" And I'm like, "No, I was just asking how your day was." They're like in shock. They're in genuine shock.
Because nobody does that.
Because no one does it. Someone always wants something from you. And I get that. That's real life. People always want something from you. And that's not to say that I don't walk around and ask people for things like that. I do it all the time. But not before I've interacted with them as a human being.
And why can't it just be that the thing I want from you is to know how you're doing?
Yeah, how your day was. Or, because, and what happens is, besides being more personable, you start to develop a rapport with people, and that actually benefits you in the workplace.
Yeah.
I'm genuine friends with everyone in maintenance at our building. You know what happens now? Every time I need something for maintenance, I get
them
it
right there.
And that's not because I'm using them. I'll even shout out Russ right now. Russ is the main guy. Love you, Russ. He's trying to build a robot right now, and I'm helping him weld.
That's cool.
It's fucking cool. He wants to build a robot that mows the grass by itself. It's sick.
Like a Roomba, like that. That's
a Roomba, but for mowing lawns. And I'm helping him with it. That's a genuine relationship that I have. But you know what? When I need a desk or something, or a chair or something that I need moved, if I even bring it up in conversation, he'll be like, "Oh, do you need help with that?" You want me to come help you with that? Or he'll catch me doing something and stop to help because we're friends. Like, you're not gonna get far in a workplace, or there's no way to collaborate by yourself.
Yeah.
It's just impossible.
Well, we're social creatures, right? Like, I always separate health into 3 factors, even though all 3 of them are directly related to each other. But there's like your physical health. There's your mental health, which obviously is related to your physical because your brain is an organ of your body. But there's also your social health, which affects the other 2 as well, and the other 2 affect that. And a lot of people just kind of like push social health into mental, especially when we see like every time there's like a shooting or something, just like, oh, mental health is a problem. Mental health. I think social health is a problem more than anything. And that even kind of relates back to at the beginning of this conversation, we're talking about how social media is actually probably one of the worst things because I think it actively damages social health.
Oh, 110%. It's the same reason why kids aren't even kids anymore. I'm not. Let's again. We're good. This is the boomer hour, folks.
Yeah.
Like kids are trying to act like literally act like adults and look like adults. Like, when you were a kid, you're like, oh, I'm gonna wear dresses and be like more assertive.
Like the goal should be become an adult, but it's a process. You don't act like you already are one.
Like perfect example. Put all the other things people say about the movie aside. That Turning Red movie that came out, and everyone's like, in a big criticism from like kids that are a little bit younger than us. We're saying that saw it. We're like, 8th graders don't act this way, and I'm like, they used to.
Yeah, I think they still do to some degree.
Yes, to some degree, because you can't just become not a child anymore. You're always gonna have it's just purely by your brain still developing. But there's a chemistry behind it. But them being silly and having clubs and like that's a thing that's what I used to do when I was a kid. I used to play pretend in the woods, and I used to build shit with my friends, or we would have clubs, or we'd hang out and talk about anime and stupid I used to love Trigun. I still love Trigun, but there was a show I was obsessed with, and then my friend would draw That's a Stampede, baby, $2 billion double dollars.
A humanoid typhoon.
Human typhoon, baby. Like that's no, I'm not doing thirst traps on TikTok at 13. Sorry, I didn't do that back then. And is that their fault? No, that's just their perception now, and it's But yeah, you're saying the social health of society, because let's say those evil atrocities, their only reason was bullying. Let's put the bullying factor, because obviously being a social outcast was 100% a factor. Outside of the other shit people talk about. If something that art does, like I look at it's funny. If you swap out art and put in religion, the conversation still makes sense at this point. That's how I talk about art, really, and how I truly feel about it.
I think art, beauty, right, is a religious experience, whether you separate from any given religion or not. Like that is what the act of finding something beautiful is.
Art is meditative, and the result of art is beautiful. It's just is religious, But what art does is it creates community. It makes you talk to the person next to you. A collaborative art piece that makes you literally communicate with each other. Art can be perfect example. You'll find out that the kids that bullied you and you hated, you all like the same show.
Usually, yeah.
Usually, the kids that I hated still love Trigun probably, or Cowboy Bebop or whatever, or Neon Genesis, whatever. The hell
Oh
was
yeah, I
on
think the
them.
people that tried to bully me early on were all into like really into Dragon Ball Z, and like everybody watched Dragon Ball.
Ball
Of
Z.
course,
Oh my god,
right? Like,
of course I love Dragon Ball Z. We can
yeah,
both get in on that. But it connects people. It's because it's the need to consume art is as human as eating and shitting. Like,
yep,
we can all relate to a poop joke. We can all relate to food porn and food consumption and how good things taste, and we could sure as hell relate on how we consume art. And
yep,
that would, if that became more of an essential part of um the at least the public education experience, which is mandatory, so literally your childhood, um it, I think that would dampen that part of the conversation. And you wouldn't have as
yeah.
much bullying. You wouldn't have as much social outcasts. Everyone would be friends, at
Because
least on
I've
on a
always
fundamental understanding.
hated the way our conversations around bullying is. Like, stop bullying, stop bullying. Well, I mean, first we have to define what bullying is, right? Because to a certain degree, there's certain levels of hazing that are actually healthy for kids. But then, like, when you do get to the damaging stuff, nobody actually proposes a good solution for it. It's all like, well, we need to signal the virtue on it. And it's like, well, I mean, why don't we make community stronger? That might help. Like,
Well, that's the thing.
making
It's the
schools
difference
less
between
cliquish.
yeah, it's the difference between hazing for camaraderie versus hazing for ridicule.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Like, there's got to be a degree there, and we got to be able to recognize it. And then we like, okay, well, how do we stop or at least heal this specific thing? And then nobody actually wants to propose good solutions. They just like, oh, we got to stop bullying. No toleration of it. Shoot, my school had a zero tolerance policy that if you got hit by somebody and they count as a fight, even the person who got bullied could get suspended from school.
yeah, my school had the same thing, and
Yeah.
it's a process. It's because people would rather say a problem sucks than address the reason why the problem happens in the first place.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to say something sucks, but it's also unnecessary because everyone knows it sucks.
Yeah.
It's the same reason why everyone gets pissed when they get preached at in whatever which way direction in this
Yeah.
country.
It's like, yeah,
They're
yeah.
like,
We
no
know.
shit, I know. Why it's annoying to hear you say is because I already know you're not telling me anything new. You're wasting my time. But what art does is it teaches you empathy
Yeah.
because empathy is different than sympathy. Sometimes people confuse the two words. I know you know, but I'm just for just
Oh,
the
yeah,
listener.
yeah. I actually have a big
sympathy,
issue with how empathy is used in the modern day.
because it's usually used in place of sympathy, or it's just used in the place of whatever.
Yeah.
The sympathy is like, I totally functional. I objectively understand why that sucks. I feel bad for you.
Yeah.
Sorry. Like, you can sympathize. Most people can sympathize with the homeless. Very few can empathize with them.
Yeah.
Because empathy is understanding something, and you can only understand something truly unless you experience it.
So, some shape or form, yeah.
Through shape or form, but also empathy allows. But another way you can understand somebody by not fully living their experience is being able to relate to them in some way, or you can put yourselves
way to do that.
When you could put them exactly, so where you could put yourselves in their shoes. That's why storytelling, like projecting yourself onto a character, is very empathetic. That's why horror movies are scary, because humans are naturally empathetic, and you could totally put yourself into the perception. So what art would do in these social situations between students is, it's really easy to alienate someone if you don't understand them. But the moment some guy likes the same thing as you, almost instantly you're their friend. It's quickly how that happens.
Yeah.
But, like, at the very least, that person is now way more human to you, because he's on his couch watching Dragon Ball the same time you are, because DVR isn't a thing and Adult Swim is on. Like, he is watching Dragon Ball the same time as you, and tomorrow, if you mentioned the episode, he would know what you're talking about. That makes him way more human than some quote unquote nerd that is quiet, that doesn't talk, and he's weird and a loser.
Oh, my school actively damaged this because they went into kind of like a standardized dress code. So not only were like fights got big, like more fights broke out after they did this, and they thought it was going to do the opposite solution. And like, not only were some people cramping on each other's style all the time because nobody could have their own style, and that caused an issue, but like you couldn't like signal from a distance to people anymore because you couldn't wear like a graphic tee and then somebody like, oh look, they're wearing a Pokemon tee. I like Pokemon. Maybe I'll get along with this person. Like you don't have any way of doing those like sort of tribal signaling that would get you into a group before even confronting somebody about it. And I feel like that just made things worse instead of making things better.
My best friend, like from when I was a kid, he's not my best friend now, but best friend at the time, we became friends because, and I love Zelda. Everyone loves Zelda.
Yeah.
But the difference was he had a Ganondorf T-shirt.
Oh,
I had no idea where he got it. I had no idea where he got it, but also I was like, dude, based. Like, fuck yeah. Ganondorf is badass. Like, I'm like, it's not just a regular Zelda Triforce T-shirt. That's a Ganondorf T-shirt, and we talked about it, and then we became friends. Because then he showed me his DS, and he was saying he was playing Link to the Past. I was like, oh shit, and and then that's how it starts. I show him Star Fox, and then that's it. Game over. Now we're best friends, hanging out, and did dinner at my house. And now these two kids have a friend. And now they're not shooting up the fucking school.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I've had similar situations. So my favorite character was always Bowser and Mario. Most people like usually the good guys. And I mean, all the Mario characters are cool.
Bowser
my other favorite character is Daisy, but like I was like really into Bowser, right? I would have like Bowser stickers on my DS and stuff like that, Bowser T-shirts, and like you make a connection with somebody because very few other people are like into those characters, like maybe the villain who you only see at the end, or maybe a side character. When you meet somebody like that, you're like instant connection.
You ever heard the canon of Bowser and Peach where actually Bowser and Peach are like in a happy committed relationship, but like for the king, because since the kingdom wouldn't approve it, they have to keep staging like a kidnappings. That's why it keeps happening.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Because those birth those comics where you get to see like slice of life Bowser and Peach. And I'm like, this is good for my eyes. I love it.
Yeah,
I love Bowser.
Well, we've been over an hour.
All right, is that you want to call it a wrap?
Yeah. We were having such a good conversation. I didn't want to like just cut it in like a crucial point, but I think that's it. So we can definitely do this again sometime. I
of course, my
to
friend.
other people as well. I just want to definitely put some gap in between times. So we actually have something to catch up on, and other people can come in. But thanks for coming on.
Appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.